Good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are in the world. I have a fantastic guest for the audience today, Julien Belmont, and he's a startup founder and CEO. His startup is called the Human Network, which we're going to hear all about what he does. And he's got freedom. He has time, emotional, he's got financial, location freedom, and I'm really happy to showcase him and his startup for the audience. Julien, welcome.
Thanks. Happy to be here.
Yeah. Briefly introduce yourself and talk about what Human Network is and what it does.
All right. So I'm Julian. I was born to a French dad and a German mom. Grew up in Europe, early childhood. And then I grew up with a little sister, which makes it for very interesting stories. Moved out of the house in my second year of college, moved to New York, studied at St. John's University, then moved to Tokyo, where I had the pleasure to live the 2011 big earthquake and all that Fukushima stuff. That was kind of a very good experience, so to speak. Before that, in my first year of college, which I failed, I created my first startup at 19, which was a great learning experience, but maybe we'll cover that a bit later. After Japan, took a year off, and I had to finish my master's, and that brought me to China for 8 years. I lived over there, did some different startups, joined different projects because they were pretty fun, and in various industries, mostly not related. Moved back to the States, COVID hit, and that's where I lost pretty much everything. It wasn't the first time I lost everything, so that was kind of like I was accustomed to it, but this was a pretty bigger hit. Moved back to Europe, where I'm now, and had to kind of start from scratch. Took on woodworking for a year to kind of breathe and let me think about what I should be doing. And that's when the human network, started to germ into my mind. And that kind of came from seeing in the States all the people not having access to medical insurance because of the system, of how the system is built. And when COVID hit, you could really see that happening. A lot of people were in distress, and it was a very difficult time for a lot of people. And since I had nothing to do and I had to start everything from scratch, I thought, okay, what would be a worthy cause for me to tackle, sink in all my experience I have over the years, and do something worthy that I could be doing for a long time. And that's kind of like how it started. Like, how can I make an impact? How can a business make an impact and be a business at the same time? And so the biggest problems of our lives, there are a ton of problems in the world, but one problem we use daily is social media. They've been around for a long time. We are all using them, pretty much all of them, all of us, on a regular basis. But the system is flawed, and so we are changing things. And that's like how it started. And it's going to be released on April the 9th on the App Store, and it's going to change things. Happy to talk about it. If you have more questions about it, I'll be happy to indulge you.
Yeah, really. Yeah, I've got a lot of questions. Your startup, your founder, your journey. It's always great to one first the Human Network, what it is, why people searching for a solution to their problem or pain point or aspiration, what need does it address?
Okay, so social media has created a host of different problems that maybe you see it as a content creator, podcaster. The regular person is going to see different kinds of problems. So there's a host of different problems. There's like creators, regular people, and their businesses. All of these people have problems with social media. Those problems are not the same. And so we try to address most of these and bring them together in a radical new way. So I'll start with your regular people, you and me, when we open our big apps on a late night and we scroll. You have no control over what you scroll over. You're fed an algorithm from an algorithm, and you're fed content you have no control over. So one of the things that we're going to do is we're going to bring back control to what your new experience is. So you're going to be able to be a master of your own algorithm, which is going to be a tremendous change on how people consume content. You'll be able to select the type of content you want to see, the categories of content you want to see, the quantity of things you want to see, essentially telling the algorithm what you want, and it will obey you instead of pushing things based on your likes and, your interactions with things. That's one thing. Second thing is, for content creators, there's a lot of burnout happening because they have to create and churn ideas and constantly post, because that's the name of the game. Because the moment you stop, your reach drops and you have to start from scratch. And so the idea is that's burnout. And the rate of burnouts are massive and super, super high. And it's only getting worse. And so we thought, okay, why not take care of everything that creates the burnout feeling and solve that for these people, because that's what they want to do. That's their livelihood. And so the system and life, the network, will solve these pain points and will allow them to get in touch with businesses, get their sponsorship deals, get their brand deals, get a better audience fit because of that algorithm tweaking that people are going to be doing themselves. Your content will be seen by people that are really genuinely interested in your stuff. Then there is the monetization aspect. I don't know if you make a lot on your podcast with the views and all that stuff, but the system today is capped. So all these big platforms have a fund. Some call it the creator fund, and that fund is limited. So they put a certain amount of money in it, and then creators share that pot. But the more creators are coming into that pot, the smaller your share becomes. Therefore, on a crowded industry, everybody wants to be a content creator because everybody wants to be Mr. Beast. The problem is with that system that it's not sustainable. And so what we're doing is we're taking 40% of our ad revenue and we give it to content creators. That means that as the network grows, content creators' earnings grow with us. So that's a radical shift in how we do things. Now, for businesses, they use social media to find their customers and sell. That's pretty much why a business would be using social media, essentially. I take some shortcuts. Problem is, social media is very complex. If you're a small business owner, if you're a pizza shop, you don't know how to make a viral video. You don't know how to get in touch with a content creator. There's a lot of things you don't know how to do because it's a bit overwhelming. And what you do in that case, is your pizza shop, you will go to a digital media agency. That digital media agency is going to take a lot of money from you to put you in touch with some people, some creators. But those are not going to be your ideal prospects that you want to work with because they only work with a certain subset. And so this is very costly, it's quite inefficient. And so we're going to put that in the network and have businesses be put in touch with creators, with the right people at a fraction of the cost and in a much more efficient way. We tie all of that with sales happening within the network. So you don't have to create an external website. You don't have to get people from one app to a website to get to all the credit card information, all that. Everything's going to be streamlined. And that's kind of like how the big pain points that we solve. Now, there's one thing on top that we wanted to do, and that's not a problem. It's more of a philosophy. And this is what we call the Life Fund. So the Life Fund is basically us running ads that are going to be donated into a fund, and people are going to be choosing where that money goes. So every month, we'll have a couple of charities and good causes, and people will be able to vote on where the money generated on the network by companies are going to be going. To give you an example, if TikTok was using our business model last year, they would have given away $1.3 billion into charities in the US only. So that's what we do.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah. And the other question, it's an interesting, and I always love hearing like new ideas. And it sounds like it sounds like your whole career revolves around startups, and it's a lot of, some of the audience, they're just accustomed to this like 9 to 5, go to school, get a job, etc. But so talk about just the startup and life, and what compels you about the startup world as opposed to pursuing a traditional path.
So I guess I'll share my point of view on that, right? But this is different for everybody. I just want to say that first. For me, my late godfather was an entrepreneur, and my dad was a corporate guy. They went in the same field of business, which was hotel business. They went to school together, and one went the other way, one went the other. And so I grew up seeing both. And I saw one doing crazy hours, my dad, out of the house at 6, back at 11, pretty much every day.
Yeah.
And then I saw my godfather doing the same kind of hours, if not more. And then I could compare what was what. And I saw one had much more freedom, worked as hard, it's not a little bit harder, but had more freedom to do whatever he wanted, whenever he wanted. And I saw my dad, corporate, great success, built his career from being like nobody to a good managerial position. And I thought, okay, which way appeals the most? And I think that kind of shaped me into thinking entrepreneurship. I think entrepreneurship is my way. And I started experimenting with this when I was 15, and I started to sell some MP3 players back on eBay in, I don't know, when the first were USB sticks. So like a long time ago. Makes me very old. Anyway.
I assume you're a Gen X.
Yeah, I'm still a millennial.
Oh,
I'm 36, so I'm not that old. But it gave me a taste of entrepreneurship. And then the startup, to your question, I always wanted to get into that because like I did my Steve Jobs and what he did, it was fascinating. In the first year of college, we tried it, and it was a great experience. I was pursuing a master's in business and entrepreneurship. In 6 months of doing this stuff, like I learned so much because you have to learn things on your own. You have to learn accounting, marketing, like everything you would learn in business school. It's a crash course on just do your stuff, otherwise you die. And then one of my co-founders betrayed us, and that kind of like crashed everything. We had to sell. Anyway, it was a great learning experience. It's hard, obviously. And then I was like, okay, maybe this isn't for me after all. And then I finished my studies. I earthquake in Tokyo, went back to France to finish my master's. But I took gap year, and at gap year, I worked for HSBC in private banking for 6 months. Super corporate. So like the total opposite of what I always wanted to do. And so I got to experience in a short amount of time, fair enough, those two worlds. And I was miserable. I was genuinely miserable at that job in front of my computer. Not that I'm not in front of a computer. I'm spending my whole life in front of a computer, but working for somebody else in this like big environment with all these rules and office politics. And it just wasn't for me. And I have this talk with a lot of my friends because most of my friends are not entrepreneurs. They're pursuing careers and they're really happy. And I think down the line, at the end of the day, this is what is important, right? What do you feel? Do you feel happy in your career? Do you feel happy with the path you chose? Or do you feel happy being miserable and eating chicken and rice and not knowing your future, which is like my path I'm taking now? It's really who you are. And I think like it's instinctive and you can feel it, whether you are one or the other. That's kind of what I believe. It's not science. I'm not saying this as like this is the truth, but that's like what I feel.
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah, because there's always this path. Do you go the traditional route, or do you become an entrepreneur? And it's always a tough decision. Yeah, I remember those days when you had to ask for like vacation, or you had to even ask like to go to the restroom, which is ridiculous. But one thing is talking about is, do you think in terms of entrepreneur, because now we've got huge major disruptive forces. The internet took out a lot of just like traditional ways of thinking. COVID. But now it's like the iPhone, social media, cloud. Now we got AI, robotics, and this idea, this like kind of this traditional idea of go to school, get into debt, learn a trade or profession, get hired by a company, work 60 years, retire. That doesn't really work for a lot of people now. So do you think a lot of people are going to be forced to learn entrepreneurship? And do you think, for example, colleges and education is going to just not be relevant anymore because people can go onto YouTube and podcasts and you can ask ChatGPT anything and they can explain it to you very well, better than any teacher or professor?
Chris, that's a very hard question. That's a very difficult question. And a lot of people have opinions on this. Some will say college is useless because of everything you just said. You can learn on your own, and college is not as valuable as it used to be. Yes, there are much more tools in today that allow you to do stuff faster, easier than it was before. I don't know if you can learn to be an entrepreneur. I think, and this is probably gonna be controversial. I don't think you can learn. I think this is something this is who you are. So like, you like to take risks. You can suffer and endure pain a lot and shit conditions of life, which I've had lowest. Sorry, I cursed. My bad. Sorry, my bad. Bad conditions of life, a lot of setbacks, judgments of others, doubts. All of this makes entrepreneurship very hard to sustain for a longer period of time. Now, if you're equipped to deal with that and you accept it, you embrace it, and this is who you are and you're happy this way, then yeah, you got so many opportunities to do things. You got GPT, you got all the resources like Udemy, all these like online courses you can take. And if you need knowledge, you can do YouTube and learn stuff. I learned woodwork, for God's sakes, I learned woodworking in a year on YouTube. Like, I picked up YouTube, I bought some tools, and I learned how to make tables and chairs and stuff, like, because I liked it, I was interested in it. So that powers your will, right? If you're interested in something, you're going to learn fast because you have the will and your mood is there. Now, college, I did college, I finished college. I wanted to quit college when I had my first startup. And that sparked a big discussion with my parents. Like, my parents were like, you need to finish your education. And I'm glad I did at the end of the day, even though I've never used my degree to get any jobs because I always try to do my own thing. It gives you structure. It gives you things that are just different than what you need to be an entrepreneur. And it's not the same. And I don't think like it's about, is it better or worse? Is college useful or not useful? It depends also what kind of field of study you go in. Like, depending on what you study, very hard to study certain types of topics. And it's also the people you meet. And this is something that's often very overlooked. When you are an entrepreneur, you rely on your own, you're by yourself, you're miserable, and it's very difficult. If you're in college, you get to meet a lot of people, you get to expand your opinions, you get to debate, you get to do other things that you can't necessarily do if you're by yourself or you're doing YouTube. And this is very valuable. So I'll give you an example. If I'd quit college, I would have never gone to New York. I would have never gone to Japan. I would have never gone to China, and did everything I did because I had a program. I was lucky enough to have a program that allowed me to visit different universities. And that's a great experience. Now, what I learned as the curriculum and stuff like that, I'm sure there is structure I'm using every day. I don't even realize it, but that's a tough question. And college is not for everybody. You can also learn a trade. You don't need to be an entrepreneur. You can learn a trade, which is also something different. There's a lot of entrepreneurship involved with this as well. So it's very personal. I think like it's a very personal decision at the end of the day, whether you want to go into college. The debt thing, that's something else that's very American. For example, in France, you can go to college for free.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that we have some pretty good ones, and fair enough, it's a specific system. But if we're talking about the US, it's true that financial burden is something to consider. And the promise of college was always go to college, and once you're done, you're out, you have a good job, and you can build from there, build yourself up, and be financially free and get there. And somehow that got eroded a little bit from what I understand. And maybe that promise should be rekindled and something should be looked at. But I don't know how to answer your question, college or entrepreneurship. That's a really tough nut to crack.
Yeah. We have around 5 minutes, and so just end it out because entrepreneurship is all about risk. And what was really interesting is you're either miserable as an entrepreneur, you're either like poor and broke, but you have your freedom. You can pursue whatever you want, or you're stuck in a corporate job that you hate and you have no control. So it's
That's very black. That's very black and white, Chris.
yeah. So it's what you choose your own. But so how do you what mindset would help you to manage risk? And then finally, how can people find you and learn more from you and connect with you?
So risk, again, I think like risk at the end of the day is what you're willing to sacrifice. I have a lot of friends that are not willing to sacrifice certain aspects of their lives, and that's totally fine. It's their choice, and I'm not judging it. That's the way they want. I was willing to sacrifice a bunch of stuff. That's just who one is. It's a trade-off. I don't have a family right now, so I can afford to do that. If I had 2 kids, would I be doing the same choices? Maybe not. So your life also has an impact on that choice. And that is something to consider. It's easier to start when you're young and you don't have that big responsibilities as family, kids, wife. So that's, yeah, in a way, I'm fortunate to be able to do the sacrifices, because I wouldn't want to be in a place where I'm at and eat glass and smile if I had 2 kids, because I would want my kids to have the best. And so I would probably bite the bullet and go take a job and take care of my family. But circumstances are that, and if you go down the path of entrepreneurship, I think I won't say anything groundbreaking here, but everybody suffers. You can have success, but you will definitely have failures. And I think it's just part of the deal. And I'm saying that, and at the same time, you can have failures in your corporate job as well. You can be demoted, you can be fired. There's a lot of things that can happen. It's not like us entrepreneurs who have a miserable life most of the time. It's not true, because we're still happy, even though we're a bit miserable. But I think most of us are happy to do what we do. Yeah, so that's kind of like my 2 cents on it. Again, like just my experience. And to connect with me, all my social media handles are Julien Belmont 1, wherever you look. So it makes it pretty easy.
Excellent. Thanks so much for coming on, and a really interesting discussion. And I know best of luck with the Human Network in your app and your startup, and keep up the great work.
Thank you, Chris.